What's up everyone, Subterranean here, and today we're gonna learn how to make this bass. This is a very screechy type of sound that's been used in a lot of jump up drum and bass tracks by artists like DJ Gov and many others. So, let's start by opening up Massive, and like always we're going to initialize this preset. And let's also get rid of these external effects because we won't be using them until later. And like always, you can go to the description box below and we'll have a download link for the full Ableton project file. You'll get this bass along with the drum arrangement that I provided. That same folder will also include the Massive preset file, so you can just load this sound into Massive and add a couple of effects and you'll be getting the same results. So, like we always do for our basses in Massive, the first thing we'll do is we're going to go to the fourth envelope, and we're going to take the attack, increase, and set that all the way to the left. Take the decay and the level, and set those all the way to the right. And we'll actually leave the release on the default amount here. We're not going to turn the release off because when I was making this bass and I turned the release off, I noticed some clicking sounds when I was playing notes. So I turned the release up and that fixed the problem. So we'll just leave that at the default here. Now let's change our oscillators. For our first, second, and third oscillators, we're going to be using sine square, and we're going to put the wavetable position for all three of these oscillators at the very left so we get a plain sine wave sound. And for oscillator 1, we're just going to leave everything default here. The pitch will be normal, and we're not going to change anything. Now for oscillator 2, let's activate that by turning the amp up. I don't want this oscillator to be too loud, so I think we'll try putting the amp right at the P in the word amp right there. You can see the knob is hitting at the letter P. And now we're going to turn up the pitch on our second oscillator. This bass is going to be somewhat similar to the classic dubstep bass that I made a video on earlier, where you take a lower sine wave and a higher sine wave and you have them contrast and you distort them. But we're going to add some totally different effects to this to make a much more gritty and complex sound. So let's turn up the pitch. And we'll go with 36. That's about 3 octaves up. And for the third oscillator, we're just going to turn the amp all the way up. This is just giving us a louder sine wave at the same pitch. But now we're going to change that by going over to our modulation oscillator tab. We'll go to the phase tab right here, and we'll set it to phase with oscillator 3. This is sort of like Massive's equivalent to FM basses. And let's turn the phase all the way up here. And you're going to notice a big difference. We're going to change the pitch on here as well. I think we'll put it at 41. Sounds a little bit nasty right now because the pitch is clashing, but believe it or not, this is actually going to work really well later on when we add some filters and distortion on. Before we add anything else, I'm going to turn the master down so we don't get any bad clipping. We'll do right about to the M in master. You can see that the knob is hitting right about where that M is. And now we're going to add some filters. So we're going to go to oscillators 1, 2, and 3. We'll take these little sliders for the filter and we'll send them all the way up to filter 1. We're going to set filter 1 to be a comb filter to add some nice tonality to this sound. Make sure the mix is up for now. We'll turn it to mix 2 in a little bit, but we want to hear everything at its full volume right now, so we'll just leave it on mix 1 right now. I'm going to turn the feedback all the way up. I'm going to turn the damping up right about to the letter D in damping. And now we're going to turn up the pitch. See if we get a good sound with that. I think I'm going to leave it here for now, just at the letter H. When I add some distortion to this sound, I might have to change it a little bit because it might sound a little bit odd, but I think this will work good. Now that we're done with the comb filter settings, let's choose a filter type for the second one. We'll just go with the classic low pass 4. We'll take our filter mix, send it all the way down to mix 2, so we only hear the second filter. And now let's turn up this little knob right here from par to sur. And basically this is going to make the sounds from filter 1 go into filter 2. I'm going to tweak with the cutoff right now. And it's pretty hard to hear right now, but we actually want that because we're actually going to add an LFO onto this. I think I'll put it just before the letter C in cutoff. Now we're going to add on our 5th LFO. Once again, you could do this with any of these right here, but I'm just going to go with the 5th one because it's the first LFO we have. And let's tweak with the modulation, see if we get a good sound. I think maybe right about here will be good. And now we're going to turn up the resonance. Right about at the letter R should be good. Sounds like a pretty basic wobble synth so far, almost like something that you'd hear in some old school bassline 4x4 tracks. But now here's where we're really going to make a big difference to the sound. Let's go to our first effects panel. We're going to change this over to Teletube, and let's set the dry wet all the way to the right so it'll be completely on wet. And now we're finally starting to get that really gritty sound, but it's actually a little bit too distorted for my taste, so let's turn down the drive. I think we'll put it just before the letter D. And that's sounding pretty good so far, but there's still a couple of other adjustments we're going to make. With our 5th LFO, we don't need to do a whole lot here. We're going to leave the curve on the classic sine wave shape, but we're going to turn sync on, and we'll tweak with the ratio, see if we get a speed that works well with our pattern. I think we'll leave it on 1.4. That'll be pretty good. Now we're going to go to our amp panel. Right here, this second little box where it says amp mod. We'll drag on our 5th LFO, so the volume will also be modulated by the LFO, not just the filter. Now I'm going to go to the voicing tab, and this is going to be something that might seem a little bit strange, but it actually works really well to add a sort of feedbacky sound to the second half of this bass, where you hear the LFO pattern play for a second time. I'm going to turn the unisono up to 3. Now we're going to turn on the pitch cutoff on the unisono spread panel, and let's move the slider just a little bit over. This is something that can be pretty tricky to control, as this is a very subtle slider, and if you move it even just a 1/5 of an inch, then you get a super different sound. Let's actually go to our oscillator tab and turn on restart via gate. And let's actually tweak with the pitch cutoff a little bit more. When you're doing these sort of weird, intricate parts of your sound design, I recommend playing your sounds in all sorts of different octaves and pitches, instead of playing it in just one, because some of the adjustments could make the bass sound really terrible in one note, and then it might sound great in another note. It gets a little bit squelchy at the end, and I actually like that. So I think I'll actually keep it. And one thing I almost forgot to mention with the voicing tab, we're going to leave it on monophone, and we're going to leave the trigger on always. And we're going to go to our glide, and let's turn the time up so we get that nice portamento glide sound. I think right at the letter T in time is good. Some people might prefer to have it on legato, so not all of the notes glide, and that can work really well too. It just depends on what type of pattern you're making and what type of track you're making. For now, we'll leave it on always, so all of the notes glide. Now let's go down to our little feedback panel right here, and this is a feature of Massive that is very underlooked in my opinion. Not a lot of people use the feedback, and I think it can work really well for certain types of sounds. It can make them a little bit more unique and dirty. You can hear that it gets a lot more resonant. I think we'll put it right here, where the knob is just hitting the letter A in the word amp. You can hear that the feedback works really well with that added unisono spread. And now we're done with Massive. We're going to add on some external effects now. We're going to add on simple delay as our first external effect. And we're going to do something that's pretty common in some basses. We're going to have a very small delay time that creates a very tonal sound because it's playing the same sound at a very fast rate. And we're going to have that for both the left and right stereo channels. So let's turn on link, and we'll turn off sync, and let's turn up our feedback. I want something that's noticeable but not too severe. We'll go with 55%, and let's turn down the dry wet. 37% will work well, and that delay time is way too slow. So let's speed it up, and we'll see if we get a nice tonal sound. I think we might go with 23 milliseconds. And I think we'll leave it there at 23 milliseconds. That works really well. You can hear the difference without the delay. Kind of flat, so we add it on. And just adds a whole new layer there. And now we're going to add on an instance of reverb. And we're going to go pretty subtle on the reverb here. Because one, we're going to be adding on a multi-band compressor after the reverb. And two, very wet, reverb-saturated sounds like you might hear in modern dubstep aren't especially common in jump up. The more flat sound tends to work better with the minimal nature of most of these tracks. Like always, we'll turn off the chorus, we'll turn on low cut and leave high cut on, and we'll make an input processing curve, maybe like this. Now we're going to tweak with the decay time, we'll shrink it a good bit. I think we'll go with 567 milliseconds. Yep, that'll be good, nice and subtle. And we'll also turn the dry wet down. 13% will do. Now we're going to add on an instance of multiband dynamics. We'll go for the OTT preset. And the only thing we're going to tweak here is we're going to turn the amount down significantly because with the amount at 100%, it's pretty good, but there's not enough mids. So we'll just decrease this amount. We'll go with 45%. Now we'll add on an EQ8 because there are some resonant sounds going on here that are just a little bit too distracting for my taste. We'll take band 2 and we're going to set the frequency to 432 Hertz. We'll take the gain and we'll decrease it down all the way to minus 15%. And let's tighten up the Q. Somewhere around 12, maybe 12.9. We'll go with 12.9. Now we'll take band 3. We'll set that to 539 Hertz. Again, we'll take the gain and set that all the way down. And we'll tighten up the Q again because we're just trying to take out resonant frequencies. We don't want a big scoop here. We'll go with 9.31. That works well. Now we'll go to band 5. Doesn't matter which band you use as long as it has this EQ curve. And for this band, we'll do 483 Hertz. Once again, we'll decrease the gain all the way. And once again, we'll tighten up the Q. We'll go with 9.31 for this one too. And you can hear just a big difference. This is without the EQ8. And this is with the EQ8. Not a big difference, but I like the cleaner tone of it, so we'll leave it like that. And now we'll go to our fourth band, the one that's set to a high shelf by default. We'll set the frequency to be something a little bit higher than normal. I think we'll go with about 5.38 kilohertz. And we'll increase the gain just to add some more sharpness to the sound. We'll go with 2.11 maybe. And that sounds really good. We're almost done with this bass. We've only got one more effect to add. And if you've watched some of my previous videos on this channel, you may know what's coming up next. We're going to add on a free third-party plugin that's available on both Windows and Mac. And it's called Clip Shifter. And all we're going to do here is we're going to increase the in gain to make this sound a little bit more gritty. I just turned it up to 7.33 as sort of a test there. And I think we'll actually leave it there at 7.33. And one thing I sort of just now realized is that I actually have the pitch of the comb filter set wrong. That's just sort of what happens when you're making these sort of weird type of basses with a lot of processing and a lot of comb filters and delays and those type of tonal effects. So let's go back into Massive and let's tweak with that pitch more. This is something that I actually suggest doing with these types of basses, is setting the pitch to one level just to test everything out. And then when you've got all the other effects on, then you can go back in and fiddle around with the pitch of the comb filter more to see if you get a sound that you like better. And after a lot of fiddling around, I got the pitch to sound correct with the comb filter. When you're tweaking with the pitch, the high notes might sound a little bit muddy sometimes, and that's okay. Just make some very slight adjustments with the pitch, and right about here, just start there and adjust it just a little bit until you get something that sounds like this. And that's one thing that is sort of unfortunate with Massive, is that unlike Serum or some other plugins, they don't give you any sort of number or any sort of exact measurement as to where you're adjusting your knob. It's just sort of rough estimates with Massive. But that can actually make things kind of fun too, because hey, you adjust something the wrong place, but you actually end up creating a cool, unique variant on the sound. And there we go, now we finally have our sound. So that was my tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this video and leave a comment, as it really helps us out. And please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.